Hello, this is Abby.
Dear Abby, this is gonna be a long one.
Oh boy.
Dear Abbey, how do you tell the difference between a new exciting crush and a rebound?
Does it matter?
Dear Abby.
Dear Abbey.
Dear Abby.
Welcome to our little corner of the internet. This is the Dear Abby podcast. I hope you stay and hang out with us. See you in a sec. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Dear Abby. I am your host. My name is Abby. Welcome back to this podcast. I hope you're having a beautiful Thursday, except for I know most of you listen actually not on Thursdays, so little slap on the wrist for that. But yeah, thank you for tuning in again. I hope that you enjoy this episode, and thank you for listening to other episodes. And if you haven't listened to my other episodes, go ahead and take a look back at those. I have literally hundreds, not hundreds actually. I don't know why I emphasize literally, because I only have, I think, 100 something, 100 and something. So check those out. I talk about all the things, a bunch of different stuff, but mostly about mental health and just some fun random stuff that I feel like talking about that day. Because who doesn't want to listen to a complete stranger talk about random things that they like and random things from their week? So here we are again on a Thursday. Welcome back to Dear Abby. Today we are talking about relationships, specifically relationship anxiety or OCD, and some things that I've done to help with my relationship anxiety or OCD, and also just in general have more joy, peace, contentment in my relationship with my husband and in all my relationships, even if it's not romantic. But we're mostly focusing on romantic because I know that's a lot of people. It's just relationships can be hard to navigate, not because the other person's hard to deal with necessarily, and not because you're horrible to deal with. It's just we get fed a lot of different things about what relationships should be, and it takes a while for you to figure out what your relationship is for you and what that's supposed to be like for you and what the dynamic is. And I don't know, it just can be a little bit confusing and can be something that we need to navigate for ourselves, and that's okay. It just takes time, because sometimes relationships are portrayed in a certain way, and that's fine. It's a movie, it's fun, it's entertaining. But sometimes if you are more of like a anxious person, sometimes, especially if you have relationship OCD, then you're attaching to all of the things that you think are a reason why the relationship is bad or wrong, or you're going to be miserable forever with them. And we'll get into all that nitty gritty stuff later on. But first, let's get into all of the dubs and L's from this week. Before I begin, yes, this is a jar of, or a glass bowl of pomegranates, because this is one of my favorite snacks of all time. I actually did a vlog one time of showing how I open a pomegranate and cut them and take all the little seeds out without getting super stained dye all over the place, because pomegranates are really red. But yes, this is a bowl full of pomegranates because I ate a couple pomegranates before, and in between when I talk, I'm starving for some reason, so I just really need a little bit of a snack to eat in between when I talk. So I'll try not to make a distraction out of it at all. But that is what this is right here. So sorry if it doesn't feel like I'm giving you my full attention, is because I am pretty hungry and I do want a little bit of a snack while I am talking. So maybe that's an L. I'm not really sure, but my dub for this week is, well, okay, I have a couple dubs. I actually don't think I have any L's from this week, other than I have had a migraine for a couple of days. I get headaches almost every day now. I am getting a little bit more concerned as the days go by, and my headache is still here. So I'm probably going to go get that checked out. I probably have said that before, and I probably didn't. I think it's just tension headache from sitting at a desk all day, and I try to stretch and do all of these things during, but I don't think it just can't overcompensate for the hours and hours that I have to sit for work. I don't have to, actually. I do want to get one of those standing desks. That is in my request of things that I want to get and hopefully get reimbursed for. But I probably should just do it anyways, even if I'm not going to get reimbursed, because, yeah, sitting is just hard to do all day. It's not good on your body. So that's my L. My dubs for this week are A. I've been really good at not doom scrolling, and trying to get away from just randomly scrolling. I usually don't scroll for a long time when I do, but it's always at times that I'm trying to do something or I'm bored and I just scroll instead. But my deb is that I've been really good at just disciplining myself and being and reminding myself why I'm not scrolling. It's not bringing me happiness. It's not helping me create more stuff, because I think I lie to myself saying, I just need to know what people like out there because I post stuff. And I'm like, I don't actually think that helps me. I think that hinders me, because then I get in my head about what I should be looking like, what I should be posting, like whatever, all of these things. Yeah, I'm just in a place where I'm fine if social media never becomes my job or my podcast never becomes my job. It'd be awesome, and I'm going to work to try to make it. But if it's not, then I'm at peace with that, and that's okay. Sometimes just posting and social media just stresses me out as a whole. And I think it's only because I felt pressure for it to become my job, because it's a lot of people's job around me. And I don't know. I struggle with it. So it might just not be for me, and that's okay. But I don't know. We'll see what happens in the future. Okay, that's just my L. Oh, wait, no, sorry, not my L, my dub. My other dub for this week is, which could be an L, I guess. Well, it's more of just like I've been watching a lot of Dungeons and Dragons lately, and my brother mentioned to me, because we were having a conversation, me and my older brother. He likes the same stuff. We're very similar in what we like. So we were talking about the Critical Role campaign 4, like the characters, all like what's happened so far, and we were nerding out about it. And then we were sitting at the table with my little brother and his girlfriend, and we were talking about Dungeons and Dragons, and they asked about it, like what we were talking about, and so we were trying to explain it, and then we both just kind of realized how nerdy it is for people that don't play. And my brother kind of brought this to my attention, that it's not only is it looked at as nerdy to play Dungeons and Dragons, I think it's an extra step of nerdiness when you watch people play Dungeons and Dragons. So you're not even really playing, you're just watching people play. And it's not like you're watching a movie or you're reading a book. You're watching people talk as though they are in a movie, or talk as though they're in a book, with no action to watch. You're just watching people talk and roll dice. But I love it. And I've been watching Dimension 20. I've been watching all of like the big Dungeons and Dragon or role play game channels, and I've been having a blast. So I this is so random, and again, sometimes I think, who cares about what I'm saying? But I'm just going to say it anyways. Sometimes, and maybe I'm breaking the fourth wall, but sometimes I'm like, if I were to ever actually do social media as a job, it would be something along those lines. It'd be something with video games. It would be something with Dungeons and Dragons, or going, if I were to be invited to events, it'd be cool to go to like makeup and clothes stuff. But what would be really cool, that I would be like actually so excited for, is any type of nerdy event like that, to promote it or something. That would be cool. Again, just a daydream. There's a peek into some of what my dreams are. Okay, so let's get into the point of today's episode, and that is relationships. I wanted to format this episode to have a couple of tips to feel more contentment, and I think just more connection within your relationship, especially if you are somebody who has relationship OCD. So some of them are just in general, and then I think a couple of them apply to people who have anxiety in their relationship, like about their relationship. And I always like to give this disclaimer when I talk about relationships, that I'm not a relationship therapist, coach. I have no expertise in any of this. So this is just all from my perspective, point of view, experience with my relationship anxiety and OCD, which kind of ran my life for a while. I don't struggle with it as often anymore, but sometimes I still do. However, it's never been as bad as it was a couple years ago, and I worked my way out of it. So these are some of the things that I did that actually really did help me. And so hopefully I can make sense of them. Everyone's relationship is different. So the way that my partner is in our dynamic might be a little bit different from somebody else's. And what your dynamic is in your own romantic relationship is like that's part of something you need to figure out and you need to be okay with, no matter if it's different than anyone else's. If you love it and you love your partner and you're both happy and healthy and everything like that, then like it doesn't have to look like anyone else's. So I think that's something that if you are anxious, you might see things online and compare to like what your relationship needs to look like in order for you to let yourself be happy in that relationship. Sometimes that can be exhausting because we're usually looking at what people put online or in movies again, and it's like it just looks a lot more perfect than what it actually can really be. But that's not saying it's not as rich and meaningful as people might show, because it is both. It is a challenge to kind of humble yourselves in relationships a little bit, a challenge to be disappointed sometimes in your relationship if you have really big expectations or dreams within your relationship, which isn't a bad thing, and I'm going to talk about that. So sometimes we can just kind of hurt ourselves or get hurt or hurt our partner because of those expectations and then the gap of where we want to be in our relationship and then where we are. So I'm going to talk about all that stuff. Sometimes if you have relationship anxiety or OCD, it might feel like you have to break up with your significant other if they've hurt your feelings or if you've gotten into an argument. This was a really big thing for me. I always thought that if there was any conflict or if we got into an argument, that it was like the relationship was over, totally over. Like we're never going to repair and we're never going to get over this. I'm never going to get over this. There was also a layer, which I think is important, that was about how I shouldn't have to deal with somebody that does hurt my feelings sometimes. Like I should be with someone that's totally healed in the sense where they are basically perfect. They never hurt my feelings. They only communicate perfectly. They are mature in every single way possible to be mature. They never get upset. They never get frustrated. They never get annoyed. They never get basically anything but happy, peace, gentle, perfect boy. I was sold a dream a little bit because, and I think I have an interesting perspective on this. So this could be biased. It could not be. I have no idea. But because my ex-husband, we like never fought. And I think there was a lack of intimacy in that, because I think fighting is when you're bringing up real things that you're struggling with, that you really want this to last with that person. So it really bothers you when they do hurt your feelings or when they do something that does not feel good, because you want to be like, hey, I don't want to feel like this all the time. This doesn't feel good to me. Because then you want to bring it up so that they hopefully will be open to listening, to changing, to even just apologizing, because sometimes that's all it takes. So there's a lack of fighting and there's a lack of arguments and a lack of opening up to potentially change anything in the relationship. So there was a huge lack of intimacy that came with the lack of arguing, if that makes sense. And that's just, I was young. I also had never been in a lot of really serious relationships, as well as it's just like something you learn in life. I don't know. You don't really get coached in relationships. You just watch people that you know. So that was my experience. And then a divorce happened. And then, he's talking to other people online, on dating apps, like all of these things. And then we get divorced. It's all very quick. Looking back, wasn't the best relationship. I don't think that we were as close as I thought we were, obviously. In that, now I know the difference between if there is real intimacy with how you communicate and like how much you're willing to kind of deal with disappointment and dealing with arguing, I guess. I don't know what just disagreements. But I don't want to be like fake and saying that I never argue, because I definitely argue, but it's not like screaming, throwing things type of arguing. I'm frustrated and my husband can be frustrated, but then we resolve it. And that's more important. For example, if I tell my husband that him being late to something hurts my feelings, and then he's late to something later on, or maybe I haven't even said that, but he's late for something, and I feel really hurt by that. When I had really bad OCD with my relationship, it was like, your person will never, ever hurt your feelings. That's what I really believed that. And then I was disappointed to find out that no matter what relationship I've ever been in, I have always gotten hurt because I get my feelings hurt a lot. I have a heart to hurt, okay? And that's a good thing. It's a lie to say that your partner will never hurt your feelings because, and I say that knowing that that could come off a bad way, but there is just way too much complexity to each person for there not to be points where your partner does something a little bit selfish, or they might not even know that it would hurt your feelings. I think most of the time in a healthy relationship that's good, most of the time they don't really know that they're hurting your feelings, or they're not aware of it yet. There's going to be times where your partner hurts your feelings. Again, these are small things. It's not going to be huge, big, toxic behavior, repetitive, toxic, bad behavior, uncontrollable, anything like that is bad. But it's like small things and everyday things. They get frustrated. So when I would ever get my feelings hurt, I always thought that was when I had to break up. I think that's pretty common that I hear with relationship OCD, especially is, okay, well, he hurt my feelings or she hurt my feelings, so we have to break up now. Or we got into our first argument, which means we have to break up. But I think there is something that you're not, and you totally can if you're like this. I think that's a good indicator if you want to be with that person, is if you're like, okay, I'm just going to leave. Or if you really want to stay, if you're willing to push past that uncomfortable first argument, second, third argument, and find your rhythm for like when you're both having a bad day or when you are annoyed or something and you might say something too bratty and it's not funny, and then you have to apologize, and then you guys come back together. So basically, all in all, I had to understand how to be disappointed. The unrealistic expectation I had in what a relationship should be, and that might sound really negative, but it actually gave me a lot of freedom to be with what is in front of me. And also it helped me love myself and my husband more because I wasn't so disappointed in everything and anything that he did that slightly could be taken the wrong way to hurt my feelings. Sometimes when we're anxious, then they might not have any intention to hurt our feelings, and they might be thinking that they're doing something good and right because they love us or they care about us. But we could be taking it a totally wrong way. And I think that's where the complexity happens, and that's when the communication needs to happen. And we need to give our spouse or a significant other the benefit of the doubt. Always, I think. So I think that mindset really helped me to just be like, okay, wait, I don't have to break up with my boyfriend that I very much like because he did something that kind of hurt my feelings. That was just like a bloom into maturity, basically, to push past that and understand that concept. My husband also is a sweet boy, and he would remind me of that sometimes. Like when we would get into our first couple of arguments, this is what would happen, just so you guys know what the dynamic used to be and how patient my husband is. We'd get into a little bit of a tiff, a little bit of a disagreement, whatever. And then I would see it as the end of the relationship. I would see it as, this is the beginning to the end. And I would act like that. I would act as though, because I really believed that it was the beginning to the end of our relationship. And so I would be really emotional. I would be really upset. The first couple of times he was really patient and reminded me, like, I feel really angry. I feel really upset. I feel really hurt, whatever the emotion was. He's like, but I still want to be with you. Just because we don't agree on something, just because we're upset with each other, doesn't mean that we have to break up. And I remember him kind of reassuring me, but it wasn't all the time. So it wasn't like an OCD thing, reassurance cycle, but it was actually really helpful because it did start to teach me like, oh, we don't have to break up because you're mad at me or I'm mad at you or something. Okay, that was a long first one. I hope that made sense. The other thing, the second thing, which is really important, is I had to let go of being in a rush to have the perfect relationship. This was a little bit of an anxious thing that we can tend to do sometimes is you want to fix, and rush into it being like we're both at peace and totally perfect to each other all the time. Because wouldn't that be nice? Wouldn't it be nice, if your spouse just does everything that you want them to? Because wouldn't that be nice, In a perfect world, sure. Like we never get on each other's nerves. None of us have a stressful day. We never feel overwhelmed or sad or upset. What if the vibes could always be up? So with that, I had to really understand patience because most of the time when I practice patience and I practice actually being patient with the things that I don't understand about him or that I don't understand about other people, it doesn't have to be in your romantic relationship, just in general. I had to really learn to, again, sit with the disappointment because most of the time the disappointment was connected to more of an anxious fear and control of the relationship of something than it was love. I had to practice patience, and normally I learned from being patient that I was being too harsh and that I don't think I would have wanted someone to be that impatient with me. So then when I was actually patient, I was like, oh, I am glad that I was patient because now I'm learning more and now I understand him more. And now I understand myself more. And so I'm glad that I took a second and I took a couple days, whatever, and was more patient with like if there was a miscommunication. I think with that is just like a lack of letting go of control over your spouse, which not like we're like puppeteers, but I think thinking that you are responsible for them in any way when really it's like you have a responsibility to love and support them, but not to control them, Like I think sometimes with relationship anxiety or OCD, you can sometimes just in general with that disorder, with those disorders, you are really uncomfortable with uncertainty and the lack of control with something. So I think a good way to counteract that is to notice how not in control you are and to sit with that and let that be really uncomfortable, but then realize that like you didn't have control before anyways. So it's better to just let people be themselves fully and to learn to love that instead of try to change it to what you think they should be. And most of the time, all of these things are happening in my head anyways. And I think a lot with a lot of anxious people can happen a lot in your head, just like the argument or the back and forth or like the OCD spiral rumination, whatever. But sometimes it can be very physical. And sometimes it actually can hurt other people in the process because they might feel like you're trying to control them. They might feel like you have, you doubt the relationship or, some of those things can be hurtful and both are okay. You're struggling and they might be hurt by that struggle. And it's not all about them. It's not all about you. It's like both. It's about both. Okay. 3 more things. Another thing is sometimes when we are anxious as well and we want to be loved, we will go above and beyond for other people. We also sometimes just want to be a good person. So we go above and beyond for somebody else, which is not a bad thing. However, it's when it's mixed up with like, you want them to notice how awesome you are because maybe secretly underneath it, you're scared that if you're not this perfect, always perfect, never speaks out of turn, always has everything clean and perfect and tidy and dinner's always amazing, and then they'll never leave me, or then they'll notice how awesome I am and then they're less likely to cheat on me. That one's very personal to me because that's something that I actually really struggled with for a long time. To be vulnerable is just like I felt like I had to be perfect at everything and go above and beyond in everything to the point of exhaustion and the point of being anxious and not having time to like really enjoy life because I wanted to portray something other than what I am so that I was loved and no one would cheat on me ever again, which is sad. And I think a lot of people have been cheated on, and I think a lot of people feel that, and that is a sad reality. But it's also something that when you become aware of that, and that's why you are trying to be perfect, or that's why you push yourself past, I don't know, exhaustion, and it's not out of love, it's out of like fear. If you are trying to serve your spouse, your significant other, and it is out of that fear and it is out of like, notice me, notice that I'm awesome and I'm perfect and I never make mistakes, and notice. And that's why you are folding their laundry. That's why you are doing the dishes, even though you cooked also. Like, whatever it is, if you're doing these little small acts and you want them to say thank you, you want them to acknowledge it, that is kind of like a test for them. And I don't think that's fair, especially if they didn't ask you to do it. That is like some form of a test. And I think that's not healthy behavior, is like trying to test your partner. And also, if you are doing that and always pushing past the point of exhaustion, or you're not doing it out of like love and service and you really want to be helpful to them, then you might end up holding a lot of resentment towards that person, because you're kind of reiterating to your brain, like, I have to always go above and beyond. I have to always give 150%. And this isn't like David Goggins' 150% motivation thing. This is like exhausting. You never feel like you're enough. And then you're doing it for somebody else. And so sometimes your brain can associate that person then with you're not enough. And that could be so unfair for your significant other, because they probably do see you as enough. And because you're reiterating that to yourself, it's going to associate that with them as well as with yourself, that you're not going to feel like you're enough if you're not, doing every chore around the house, or if you're not making, I don't know, whatever it is. I think that's a really important one. And it can be, and if you like catch yourself doing things like that, it's not you're always like some horrible manipulative person. It just can be hurtful, and it does sometimes create a lack of connection that both people in the relationship will eventually start to feel. So it's not unforgivable. It's like, it's just part of learning. And if you become aware of it, or other behaviors that you're like, I don't think that's very healthy, if I'm like setting someone up or testing or something, then just choose something else and do something else. And then you can move on, and then your relationship can start to feel better, and you can start to really actually, when you do serve somebody, or when you do those dishes or whatever, it will come from a place of actual love and support and wanting to have things nice in one way or another for your partner, just because you want them to be relaxed when they get home, and there's no other underneath scheme with it. And sometimes we're not aware of these behaviors until we are aware of them. That happened with me. I realized like, okay, actually I'm not very healthy in a relationship. Like, I actually need to shape up. The last two are more for like relationship OCD specifically, and if you struggle with OCD, and that is to obviously lean into the uncertainty and be curious about what your fears are in your relationship. Like, are you scared that you're not attractive, or that you're not attractive, or you're not attracted to your spouse? And what does that mean? What fear, what are you trying to avoid? What are you trying to not think about, or what are you trying to solve for? And it's not always exactly directed to the content of what your OCD is throwing at you, or the intrusive thoughts, or, the rumination urges to figure something out. It could be something a little bit underneath it, or something that you can, I don't know, figure out with like a therapist or with journaling. And it might take a while to kind of get to the core of some things that you're scared of in your relationship, or why that's such a trigger for you. But once you do find out, then you can start to do exposures, and exposures really do help with relationship OCD. Like, for example, if you're scared you're not attracted to your significant other because maybe when you kiss them, they have weird breath, and then you panic because you think, okay, well, if I really love them, I wouldn't care about their breath, and I should like this. And so sometimes you might avoid kissing them, or you might, when you do kiss them, you might be looking for feelings. And that is one sure way to have any butterflies or any connection kind of start to fade away, because now instead of just being in your body and being present with them in any form of intimacy, you are in your head. And so now you're not even really with that person. You're trying to think in your head. And then normally that makes you not enjoy physical things as much, because you can't even really feel what's happening. So I think being curious about what the a fear is within your relationship and start to do exposures with that. I used to write out a story with, what if we get so far along and then I end up hurting him? That was really scary to me because I didn't like, I don't know, that was really hard for me to sit with, is what if I hurt him? I think I just, because sometimes I'm like, I think I'm okay when people hurt me. I think I can be cold-hearted sometimes, which is something I work on, is not becoming stone cold to protect myself. But I was more scared of hurting him because I don't want to hurt anybody. Because what does that mean about me? Like, I don't know. There was things that came with that fear, and learning about that and realizing that's something that I was scared of helped us structure exposures around that. So I would write stories about me breaking his heart. I would write stories about also me not being attracted to him and hurting him that way. For a while, if I saw anybody that was an attractive man, I would feel like I was cheating on him. Objectively, that is an attractive person. And then my OCD would be like, oh my gosh, do you like him? Oh my gosh, are you going to, like, it would just go on to all of these things. And that used to really bother me. And so I used to not want to like go do anything. I would never look at anybody. I would look at the ground. And so an exposure was like to go places and to just look around like normal and act like normal. And then when those thoughts started coming up, it was like, yeah, maybe. And I just kind of had to lean into the uncertainty and also kind of sass OCD a little bit, I guess. But those can be really hard things to sit with because obviously no one wants to hurt somebody else. But that is kind of how you have to treat OCD if you want it to have less of an impact on you every time those thoughts come up. So yeah, exposures are very important with relationship OCD, and they were for me, as well as, and I've talked about this before, is just realizing why you're in a relationship. What are you trying to accomplish in this relationship? And also why this person, and focus on sometimes like the values of your relationship. How do you want to show up? How do you want to treat them? How do you want them to feel in this relationship with you? And then also just about connection. Like, then that's a little bit, that's like the fun part, is you just are connected with somebody that you love and that you laugh with and have fun with, or, you know, whatever the dynamic is. And the last little piece of advice, or things that you should probably stop doing, is avoiding. That's a little bit to do with the exposures, but also avoidance can look like not kissing your partner. Avoidance can look like not arguing with your partner. That can be a huge compulsion. If you're scared of arguing because you don't want it to get out of control or something, sometimes you might just keep all of your feelings in, and it just might boil up, and then you start building up that resentment because you're not speaking up for yourself in your relationship. You could be avoiding arguments. You could be avoiding talking about your feelings. You could be avoiding intimacy because maybe you have intrusive thoughts, or maybe you're, again, scared you're not attracted. So it feels not great and it's hard to, enjoy any kind of intimacy, physical intimacy. Take note of what things you are avoiding in your relationship, or maybe ways that you're not wanting to go deeper with your significant other. And that can be an important starting point to try to feel more connected, because with all of these things being said, I'm obviously not perfect in my relationship. I know sometimes what I need to do, and sometimes it's so hard still to bite my tongue. It's so hard to be perfectly patient, to be perfectly not overstimulated or not overwhelmed, and then react less than ideal of what I actually truly want to act like. But when I started actually working on my relationship anxiety and OCD, and making those little changes and those little perspective shifts, and focused on my values and did actual exposures where I really got really anxious during, I started to feel more connected to my husband. I started to feel more confident in myself and my decisions and my relationship. I cared less what other people said or how other people felt. I didn't even think about it anymore. I also just naturally became a much kinder person because I felt happier. And I also felt just more love for my spouse, and actually being able to see them clearly instead of through like anxious OCD goggles. So that's a gift that I'm grateful for. And it's 100% worth it to change these small things, because it feels good to learn and grow and become something different. Relationships are such a huge part of everybody's lives. So it's important to feel happy in your relationship. That is a really important thing. And a lot of that has to do with how we show up in our relationships. Obviously, a huge chunk of it is how they show up as well. And when you find a good match, it's like you're both really in it and you're in it for life, and you just know that you'll always resolve whatever's happening and you come back together and closer than ever. And this is the last thing I'll say, and then we'll do a Dear Abby. But when I actually realized that I could argue with my husband and it wouldn't escalate to something crazy, it was like we both had to fight within ourselves to break our walls down during that discussion. And we'd sometimes have to take a break, wait a couple hours. He goes on a walk. I read a book, or I lay down, or I cry, whatever. And then we come back together, and then we resolve it, and we come back closer than before. But breaking those habits of just like putting your wall up is incredibly hard to do. Very, very possible, and very extremely rewarding. Something I'm most proud of probably is how our relationship is, because how my husband and I are able to communicate now and how happy we are. And most of our interactions now are extremely positive and extremely happy and fun and joking and laughing and being silly. And then, of course, life isn't just all happy. Then there are some times where we still have to struggle to meet each other again or struggle to understand each other again. But now there's just a lot more peace with that, instead of it just always being the end of the world if we don't understand each other or something. Okay, so with all that being said, let's do a Dear Abby, and then we will end today's episode. My back is on fire. Okay, this came in earlier today, and I just want to say, I really wish that I got more context in this. It says, opinions on getting back together with your ex, ? I'm going to need a little bit more context, but I'm going to answer the question as literal as you asked, as literal as you asked it. Opinions on getting back together with your ex. With my ex specifically, never in a million years. I'm happily married. I'm joking. Stupid joke. I mean, I know a lot of people, not a lot of people. I know a couple people who are happily married now with their ex. They were together, they broke up, they got back together, and then they got married. Now, if it is a couple more of back together and then break up, I'd say I'm a little bit more hesitant to say go for it, you know? This really shows the complexity of relationships, because some people would say never get back with your ex. But I know people who, again, have gotten married and are totally happy with the fact that they got back together with their ex. And it's because humans are complicated. We can be messy. We can be wonderful and beautiful and so valiant and courageous and consistent, but we can also be incredibly messy and complicated and confusing and confused. I'd say my opinion is try it out. If you feel like you want to try it again, see what happens. Just be really committed. You can't go into it with the same headspace that you went into it before. You've got to be, if you were broken up with and they want to get back together, totally valid to be hesitant and to have maybe your heart a little bit on guard for a while. I think that's okay. I think if it's really the right person and you're both willing to make it work, eventually that person will be consistent and they will show you they're not going to hurt you again to the best of their ability. And you will feel that when the time is right and when it's been a good amount of time to where you feel confident in that. So I don't think it's wrong to get back together if someone broke up with you, if you feel like they are being serious. And I think people are smart enough to know. And if you were the one that broke up with that person, you have to be patient with the fact that they're probably going to be more hesitant and maybe a little bit less open at the beginning. And you might have to be very patient with them, and you have to be committed. You do not want to get back together with an ex, especially if you really think that this could be your person, and not take it seriously the second time around, because you will most likely lose that person for forever. So if you want to make it work, then you have to put everything into it. And that means getting into those arguments and then learning how to resolve it. Learning what things that you will need to let go of, move on from, put in the work, However, if you're just getting into it because you're kind of bored and you think it'd be fun again, I'm a little bit hesitant to say go for it on that one, just because I don't think it's fair to waste anyone's time. Try not to waste people's time by getting into a relationship you know is not going to be for you in the long run. Unless the other person's also feeling the same way and it's mutually agreed upon, that you're like, this is just for fun, right? But I'd say most of the time there's going to be a misunderstanding. So I don't know. All of it. Yes and no. Depends. Very much depends. It's the same thing as at the very beginning of when I started my podcast, somebody wrote in or called in, and it's in the intro, if you listen to the intro, where they say something about, is it okay? How do I know if it's a rebound or if it's like a real crush relationship? And I say it doesn't matter. And then if you have listened to the episode, I continue to say, because either way, if you're getting into a relationship and you are going to be committed and you know what that's going to entail and you're ready to like figure things out with that person, you're ready to open up, you're ready to be vulnerable, all of those things, then it doesn't matter either one, because you're going to show up the same way. And there's no way to know for sure. Okay, I hope that is helpful to your question. Opinions on getting back together with an ex. I actually really love just random open-ended questions. So if you guys want to send in a question like that, I don't mind. I actually enjoy it, because then I get to talk about all the different avenues, which is what I enjoy talking about. Is, well, why are you? Let's talk about the whys. But yeah, if you want to submit a Dear Abby, I will say you guys are really providing for me, because I have actually a good list of Dear Abbies, which I always appreciate. And it makes me feel good that people are actually writing in, because that makes me feel like a legitimate podcast. So thank you guys. You guys have been doing that since the beginning. Okay. I think maybe like a couple of times I haven't had a Dear Abby in a couple of years. And that's incredible. And that's a big feat for the podcast. So thank you guys so much. I really do appreciate it. If you want to support the podcast, you can write in. You can also leave a rating and a review on Apple and Spotify podcasts, as well as on YouTube. Actually, they don't have rating reviews, but you can like, subscribe, comment on YouTube. I post fun things on there, and I post all my podcasts on there. If you want to be extra supportive, you can post my podcast or tag me, Dear Abby Podcast, on Instagram. You can post on your story. You can share the episode with a friend. I really would appreciate any type of free advertising or marketing if you enjoy my episode. If you want to hear me talk about anything, you can message me, chat me, however you can contact me, just contact me in the number below as well, just so I can talk about something that you want to hear. Okay, thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I hope you guys have a wonderful, beautiful weekend. It's not Halloween yet. I don't think. I think I have another week. But yeah, stay safe out there. Be kind to yourself. Have a good weekend. Love you. Bye.
우회전 taking a ride to journey 눈치 보면서 들어가야 할 때 찾아 나머진 바빠 개설레임 바꾸는 사람들